Night Swimming by Joanell Serra. Megan Donahue, spirits lifted as she neared the exit of the nursing home, the clock just ticking past 5 p.m. Since 8 a.m., she had propped up, wiped up, cajoled, poked, and fed the elderly residents of Sunny Hills Nursing Home. A familiar thirst nipped at her as she pushed open the door. Early evening autumn breezes always carried the scent of whiskey. Russian George, the home director, called out to Megan before the doors closed behind her. "Megan!" His rusty voice beckoned from the office, and her spine stiffened, her drink delayed. She forced herself to turn back. Despite many years in the States, the staff called their boss Russian George, as he still struggled with some words in English and warmed up greasy Russian meatballs in the kitchen for his daily lunch. An otherwise hard ass, he had taken a liking to Megan for reasons she couldn't fathom. He had to know she was a dyke, and he was old enough to be her grandfather. She crossed her arms over her sticky pale blue uniform, prepared to rebuff a request to work the weekend. "What's up?"
"I have the approval from the board."
His bushy eyebrows raised expectantly, his lips faintly damp.
"I am to hire a full-time recreation specialist."
Megan tried not to react to his poor pronunciation. Recreation specialist.
"I want you to think about this job."
He waved a paper at her.
"You are interested?"
She took the job description, her eyes flitting over it, searching for the pay.
"I will post it tomorrow. You think about applicating."
She bit her tongue from correcting him. Applying. "I don't have a degree." She pointed to the requirements listed.
"I know," he said. "But see on that on the bottom, it says, or requisite experience. You have plenty of experiences, I think."
Experiences, yes. I've had plenty. He looked at her like she wasn't comprehending him.
"It's a raise, a promotion. You should apply."
"Okay, well, thank you." She waved as she turned to leave, her motorcycle helmet bumping the doorframe on her way out loudly. "Sorry." What gave with this guy? No other boss ever saw something like potential in Megan Donahue. Maybe she was a daughter substitute, since his own children lived back in Russia. Megan could use a father substitute herself, her own being presently incarcerated. Again. Her father had stayed out of jail for 3 years straight once, back when she was in middle school, his longest time out. Megan spent the whole time waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the cops to show up. Eventually they did. She rode her motorcycle on the back roads of Sonoma Valley, trying to avoid the building traffic on the highway, watching the vineyards pass in a blur, the vines bursting with fruit as the harvest came. Recreation specialist. A legitimate position, a title, maybe even benefits. She had never had any of that before. She worked part-time, low-paying gigs that never added up to much more than rent. If a boss got snippy about her running a little late or expected her to take on all kinds of extra shit, she switched jobs. Although she'd been at Sunny Hills for a year now, longer than most places, with no trouble, she mentally calculated there was approximately the same amount of time since she'd sworn off cocaine or any other hard drugs. Also the amount of time since she had heard from her twin brother. None of it was coincidental. She pictured running into her brother Francis, telling him she had a full-time job at a nursing home, with benefits. Would he be impressed? Would the iron beam of anger in his eyes soften a little? She was annoyed at herself for bringing it back to Francis. His approval, always the prize on the top of a jagged mountain she had to climb, rather than a gift bestowed. She took a hard right, harder than she needed to, and parked in front of O'Neill's, the local dive bar. The strip mall, including a place to wire money to Mexico and a decent but low-brow Chinese restaurant. She had met a cute girl here a week before. No one special, but cute is cute, and Megan had a feeling the girl would be back. 3 beers later, no cute girls present, and growing increasingly hungry, Megan was getting ready to leave when she saw him standing there. Donahue's shoulders filled the doorway, shaggy gray curls tucked behind his ears. He peered into the darkness for a minute, as if adjusting to the lack of light, and stepped in, dragging one leg slightly as he walked. A new limp. "Da?" she asked, half wondering if the beard had gone to her head. "Maggie," he said, a smile slowly growing across his pockmarked face. "Your brother said I'd find you at the bar." He shifted towards her, an old corduroy jacket and jeans hanging on his frame. He always came home from jail thin. She met him halfway and got a hug, a long, hard one, and she remembered being younger in his arms, always wanting to stay around a little longer, at least at first. She bought him a beer, knowing he'd be broke. When did you get out? She tried not to show her jealousy that he'd seen Francis first. A couple of days ago. Getting my feet back under me. It was a long stretch, this one. 2 years? 2 years and a day. Billy Donahue had been in the US since he was 17, but he still sounded like he'd just left Ireland. His face had aged more than 2 years' worth, new lines creasing his cheeks. Megan glanced at his hands, his knuckles swollen. Arthritis been bad? Oh, it's a bitch, yeah. It's got my knee right now. I saw that. Megan finished her beer. So why were you looking for me? Billy looked up at the TV where a football game played, as if scanning for a proper answer. It wasn't primarily a social call, Meg was sure of that. Money, a place to stay, to borrow her motorcycle. Billy must need something. I came to see you. You and Franny both. You two are in a bit of a standoff, huh? Says he doesn't see it all. Meg bit the inside of her lip, feeling exposed. Hated that it still hurt this much. Well, you've been gone a strange 2 years. Things haven't gone well for the Donahues. Can you imagine? I'd like to see him. Could at least let me see my niece once in a while. But he says he's done with me. Megan closed her arms in front of her chest. So that's that. I don't even know where he's living. Where'd you find him? I Googled him. Megan barked a laugh. Of course you did. I guess I should have thought of that. Billy smiled, shook his head a little. He's not that hard to find. He was on TV. She nodded. Yeah, I saw that. His new studio looks cool. Francis had been interviewed on PBS. Up-and-coming artists. Megan had taped it, watching it closely, counting the number of times Francis said organic, as in, my work is organic to the local area, and there is an organic process in conceiving the initial sketches for my paintings. His deep red hair was cut short again, and when they filmed him walking into his enormous warehouse-turned-art studio, the hair on the back of his head held the same swirled pattern he'd had as a kid when he got out of bed for the morning. He hadn't even brushed his hair for the interview, which made her chuckle. Oh, you saw it? Billy looked pleased. He's something, eh? She didn't tell him, but she watched it often, late at night, when she was stoned and nostalgic. She could feel her father's eyes on her, skeptical, waiting for the full story. She wasn't interested in hashing out all the ways her relationship with her brother fell apart, starting with her obsessive attraction to his girlfriend. Billy went on. He wasn't all that glad to see me at first. You know how he is. Little Candy's a pretty thing, isn't she? Not so dark as her mother. I don't know. Whole thing's a mash-up. Not much of a girlfriend, was she? What kind of mother leaves her kid? Megan bit her tongue. Only fathers can leave their kids. I was just going to grab something to eat, she said, standing. She thought he'd stay at the bar, but he got up and followed her out, shaking a few hands on his way. Good to see you, Billy, a couple old-timers muttered to him. They took a booth at the Chinese place, Christmas lights strung around the room and country music blaring. They both ordered chicken chow mein and a tsing tao from an old woman with chopsticks stuck in her bun. Where are you living now? Billy asked. I know you're not at your mother's place. Oh, God, he wants to stay with me. I share a place with a buddy over in Santa Rosa off Wilson. A little place. Kid I knew in high school had a room for rent. It's his place, though. I only have a room. She tried to sound significantly discouraged about having a house guest. Not a boyfriend, huh? Her father said, then giggled to himself. Megan's sexuality was a source of deep amusement for him, like it was a cosmic joke on the other men in the world. Ha ha, my daughter doesn't like any of you. When she first came out, he called her the son he'd never had, to insult both she and Francis, simultaneously. Francis, being an artist, had relegated him to the girl category, until Francis started doing well at it, selling the paintings for a decent sum. Then Billy claimed the artistic talent was from his side. Not a boyfriend, nope, just a guy, younger. Used to tag along after me and Francis when we were kids. He listens to me when I'm tired and down. He makes scrambled eggs on the weekends, and he almost always shares his weed. He's a perfect roommate. Sure beats family. Where are you staying? She asked, almost wincing. Well, that's the thing, he said, wiping a little noodle from his chin. Megan braced herself for hearing it. His need for a spot on the couch for a few days. She mentally prepared the reasons he couldn't stay with her this time, while simultaneously creating a list of alternative people Billy could go to, which was a short list. I could use a favor. Dad, my place is... I need you to help me steal a boat. Megan swallowed her bite of food and grabbed her beer. What? Well, it's not really stealing it. I won it fair and square before I got picked up. But now the bozo's not giving it up, and I've been counting on it. I've a slip all set up in Richmond. Great spot. I'm going to live on that boat. Find a little job over there. It's cheap. I won't need to make a lot. Be able to stay straight for a bit. And not go back inside again. Getting too old for the shite. He seemed to get more excited as he spoke. Beads of sweat on his forehead. His cheeks flushing slightly. Megan noticed tiny veins in a map across his cheeks that she'd not seen before. Living on the boat I'll have, you know. Low costs. What's it called? Overhead. I'll have low overhead. Maybe need to make a bit of money for groceries. That's it. Keep a low profile for a bit. I know I said that before, but look at me. I can't keep going in. And you're going to start your time straight by stealing a boat. Oh, it's just a little thing. Not a fancy yacht or nothing. The guy's not even using it. A buddy took me over to scout it out today, and it's just sitting there in the river, behind some warehouses, deserted. He don't need it. He's just giving me a hard time. He knows it belongs to me. Dad, I don't know what you're up to, but I can't help. I'm just off probation myself, you know. She'd had 2 drunken disorderlies in a row after things blew up with Francis. She'd just finished 6 months of forced AA meetings and probation check-ins. Oh, it'd be like old times. Remember when we used to sail my little dinghy around the river, over in Napa? You and Francis jumped right off back when you were hot. She remembered. Francis had a stronger stroke, could make it across the river and back. She could dive deep and find hidden treasures in the muck at the bottom of the river. She'd seen a snake once, coiled in a pipe. Panic spread through her, and she let out a silent underwater scream. Then she felt Franny tugging her back up to the surface. He laughed as they came up, and as she sputtered and screamed, pulling herself back into the boat. She looked at her father carefully, checking his eyes for lies. That's not the boat you're stealing, is it? That old one? It's not worth it. Nah, this is a nice one. Come on, let's have a drink and I'll tell you the whole story. He waved to the waitress and asked her something in Mandarin. After a minute, she brought over a bottle of rum and 2 shot glasses. Dad, Regan laughed, you never cease to amaze me. Prison, he said with a left-sided grimace. You'll learn a few things. Had a Chinese roommate this time. I can probably tell you to fuck off in a dozen languages. It's a gift. 2 shots later, Megan was hearing a play-by-play of the poker game that her father had won, then lost, then won. This elusive boat being part of the booty. It seemed his nemesis was some guy named Joe who got slippery during the game. Too many lucky cards. This in turn led to her father taking a baseball bat to the guy's car window and offering to do the same to his head. He got us thinking straight after that. He knew he'd screwed me. Cheat. So we worked it out. I got the boat, a little cash, and an apology. He got the rest of what was on the table. Problem is, I got busted coming out the door for parole violations. Then they found some shit on me. That Joe, he probably called the cops. In any case, he knows I'm back, and he's made it clear he's not honouring the deal. Keeps my boat for 2 years longer than he was supposed to. Probably needs all kind of work by now, but still, won't give it up. So you came to me. Your brother said no. Of course he did. Because my brother's not a tool. Billy looked off into the miasma of tiny lights strung around the restaurant, thinking, I just need to get myself settled, and I'll fix this thing with you and your brother. It's not right you two on the outs for so long. I never seen it go on like this. It always makes me happy, the 2 of you being close, even if you're both scraping up trouble. You did it together, you know, like you should with family. Megan poured herself another shot. He scrapes up a lot less these days, and I should too. She shrugged. That was part of the problem. Yeah, I bet the problem's a little more complicated than that. Megan blushed. She didn't want to think about the messes she'd made near the end of things, the lies she told, the lies she'd lived. It all ended a year ago. Franny's girlfriend crawling out of Megan's bed and taking herself out of the picture permanently, leaving Megan and Francis in a standoff. It's all right, her father sounded cheerful with the rum. We'll get it all patched up. But first, Billy pulled himself out of the bar, surprising her by dropping 2 20s on the table. First, we gotta get my boat, so I have somewhere to set up properly. She groaned and followed him outside, deciding how to break it to him that she wasn't going to help him with his latest scheme, even though she was tempted by his offer to fix things with her brother. Billy might be the only person who could. They stood in the parking lot, stars out and not much else at 10:30 on a Wednesday night in Sonoma, absorbing the quiet. I should go, Dad. It's getting late. I work at 7. Jesus, that's early. Why don't you take a ride with me first? The rum sloshed a bit in her belly and her brain. Wouldn't hurt to wait a bit before she drove home. Where's your car? She asked. Oh, I don't have one. That Joe fucker got that too. Telling you, it was a hell of a poker game. Maybe I'll steal that back too. He chuckled himself. Nah, he won that one fair. But the boat's mine. Where's your motorcycle? She motioned vaguely down the street where it was parked. Perfect. We'll have one more for the road and go on a ride. Christ. She should know better than to drink with Billy Donahue. They careened down Highway 12, Megan trying to squeeze her eyes and focus as the streetlights blew past them. Almost no one else on the road, at least. She drove under the speed limit, focused on not looking drunk. Can't you go any faster? Billy yelled. She ignored him. Take Adobe over to Lakeville, he added. The boat's over on the river. I'm just dropping you off, Dad, she yelled back. Okay? She'd already told him she'd drop him off, then leave. The rest was up to him. She was still telling herself that as she locked up her keys and phone in the glide bag on the back of her motorcycle. The bike was tucked in between a couple warehouses. Dad's boat, or the boat he claimed was his, was tied up off a little pier. There were a few other boats, a sailboat, crappy motorboats with deck chairs and fishing gear piled on top. This was not a luxury marina. Dad's boat was moored with lower-class boaters, which fit. Megan glanced around but didn't see anyone around. Dad, she whispered, I'm not helping you do this. Come on for a minute, he said, sounding irritated. She followed him through scruffy grass and gravel to the dock. The only thing blocking them from getting to the boat was a cheap white metal gate and a sign announcing they were trespassing. Billy used a knife to jam the lock and his shoulder to knock it open. It took him about 60 seconds, and then he was walking onto the dock like he belonged there, limping like an old sailor. She followed him across the rickety wooden planks, the water dark and oily underneath. The marina was on a river that led out to the bay, and the air a brackish mixture of the two. Billy, how are you going to start the boat? I don't know if you can hotwire a boat. It's not like a car. Sure it is, Billy answered, still heading straight down the dock. But anyway, I got the keys. Keys? How? Joe's sister gave them to me. Marie. She knows it's my boat, fair and square. She's the one told me he's away for a couple of days. That's why we had to do it tonight. A cat jumped out of one of the boats and Megan yelped in surprise. Jesus, Maggie, keep it down. They stopped and waited, but nothing stirred. No sign the cat had an owner, only the sound of the water gently lapping the boats. Dad, how the hell do you know his sister? Marie? Oh, she's an old girlfriend. Happy to have me out of the can and all that. She knows her brother's a douche. That's it. He pointed to a dirty-looking yacht, probably a 30-footer with a decent-sized deck and a cabin area. That's the one. See? It's called Cecilia. Why? Well, that's where their family's from, I guess. Italians. Great. They were stealing from Sicilians. Billy squatted at the edge of the dock and pulled on the rope, grunting as he got the boat closer. He took a set of keys from his pocket, opened a padlock on the end of a chain, and dropped the chain and lock into the water with a splash. Hold this rope. Keep it taut, he said, handing her the lead. And then he hopped down into the boat, barely making it, falling down for a minute on his bad leg. Oh, Christ and his mother, that hurt. He was writhing on the deck, cursing and catching his breath. You all right, Dad? Fuck no. He pulled himself up and limped over to the captain's chair. For a minute, she thought he might turn the boat on and drive away. leaving her alone on the dock. Her help no longer needed. The thought made Megan dizzy, the vertigo of her early childhood rising up. She knew she wanted to go along. "Come aboard already, Maggie, so we can get the fuck out of here." "Can you get it closer to the dock, Dad? I'm not falling in." "Pull on the rope, Meg. That's why you have it." But he limped over and half caught her as she jumped. Her coordination wasn't perfect, still a little rum drunk. She hit the deck a bit too hard as well and fell on her ass, which made Billy laugh. "Oh, we're a pair. You never know our people are fishermen. My grandfather would be ashamed of us. Actually, he'd be glad I'm stealing the boat." Da fiddled with his set of keys, and in about 2 minutes the engine was purring away, water churning beneath them, and the smell of gasoline drifting up as they backed out. Megan watched warily for one of the other boat owners to pop up and start accusing them, but it was still dead quiet. They headed east, out towards the bay. "Where are we going?" she asked as they angled towards the center of the river. "Marina down in San Rafael, not far. Buddy of mine's got a trailer there. It's waiting for me. Gonna hide it for a few days, let things cool off before I take it over to Richmond." He'd had this all set up. What if she'd said no tonight, like Francis did? "So, you saw Francis?" "Yeah, and his bonny baby. She's turned 7, you know." "I know." Her niece's birthday had passed, without the invitation to be there. The first time ever. It had hurt, leaving her birthday present at Grandma's, wishing she could see her niece's face when she opened it. Billy went on. "She goes to daycare all the time, what with Francis being on his own. Your mom helps, but the girl should have a mom. Doesn't deserve the family she got. None of us do." "Why don't you drive, Meg? I've got to stretch this damn leg." She took the wheel, as she had many times growing up. Billy always had access to one boat or another, fixing something up and selling it, borrowing a friend's. One good year, he had a nice little fishing boat of his own and an old spiffed-up BMW. In bad times, usually when he was first out, he would have a bicycle to get around, and that was it. Megan wondered what Francis would do if she called him. Hang up? How many times could he hang up before they talked? But the thought of trying to reach out across the wreckage of their relationship seemed too daunting. They increased speed, moving to the center of the river. Da's phone rang, a jangling sound in the night. He looked at his phone, holding it out so he could read the numbers, then answered it. "Yeah?" he barked. And then, "What the hell do you want, Joe?" A finger of cold crept up Megan's neck. Her father's voice grew belligerent, clearly rattled. "I'm not on your fucking boat. And anyway, it's my fucking boat. I don't know what you're talking about, Joe." In the distance, she heard something high and eerie, keening across the water. "You're a madman, not making any sense." "Like hell I will." "Yeah, tell your sister she can blow me when I stop in to see her." He shoved the phone back in his pocket, the sound of sirens in the distance getting closer. "She set me up, a little skank. Christ, Joe knew we were coming. He sent cops, water cops. What are they called? Coast Guard? Or probably some local fags. Set them on us. No wonder it was so easy." "What the fuck, Dad? Who is this guy?" "He's a criminal. Can you imagine? His sister's a cunt. Turn it around, Meggie. Turn it around towards the dock, quick. Gotta get off this thing. They can't bust us. Never prove we were on it." She turned hard, the boat leaning sideways towards the water on the right. She could hear the water lipping the edge of the deck in the darkness. "Hit the gas. I'll turn off the lights so they can't see us. Just need to get closer to the dock." "Dad, you're crazy." She pushed down on the gas pedal as much as she dared. "They'll catch up to us." Her head was pounding, a drum pushing on each bone in her skull. "Fucking go, Meggie." The lights were off and she careened through the black water, squinting for any sign of something in front of her. She glanced back and saw the lights of the police boat getting closer. "They're gaining on us." "They're in a fucking speedboat and we're in a putt-putt." Dad's voice was urgent, angry. Christ, if they got caught, how long would they send him back for? Her heart jumped. A trapped fish under her rib cage. "Let me drive it," he said. She crawled out of the seat, glad to let him take over. The boat slowed for a minute as he got himself in position. Then he gunned it. The boat leapt from the water for a second before it fell back in, and then it stalled. He tried to turn it over again, and it coughed, a dying cough, like an old man succumbing to his death. "You fucking flooded it, Dad." "Oh, God damn it. Joe hasn't taken care of my boat. It shouldn't have flooded." "Shit, they'll be on us in a minute." Her father's face was only lit by the faint moon, but she could still see him planning. He looked at the lights getting closer, examined the river. then stepped to the edge. "Let's make a swim for it, Maggie." "What?" "We aren't that far out. I can see the edge of the river over there. It's our best choice, I think. They'll fucking shoot us if we swim away. They'll never see us, not if we go now." He pulled off his shoes and tossed it into the water below him. "Hurry up if you're coming." And then he leapt off the side. "If I'm coming? Shit, Dad, are you crazy?" Megan ran to the edge, watching him surface and turn around in the water, getting his bearings. "You better come. Now or never, Meg." Fuck, why did she even speak to this man, let alone listen to him? Francis knew better. He'd never have gotten on the boat. He'd never have let Billy on the back of his motorcycle or accepted the first shot of rum. She could see the yellow lights growing larger. She shrugged off her leather jacket, tossed it down, then took a deep breath and jumped. The water was cold, colder than she'd ever felt, icing right through her. "Fuck, it's cold," she yelled to Billy. She grasped around for the jacket and started to swim towards what she hoped was shore. He didn't answer, but she thought she could still see him making his way west. She followed, trying to do the side stroke while she pulled her leather jacket behind her. Her boots filled with water, but she refused to take them off. How was she going to drive home on a motorcycle without boots? Each time she pulled up a leg, the water pooled inside them, pulling her down. Her jeans clung to her legs, and her flannel shirt made it hard to lift her arms. Don't panic. If she could make it to shore, her bike was parked only a mile or two back, near the dock. She could be on her bike, heading home in half an hour, maybe an hour, if she could make it to the shore. Where was her father? She didn't see him, but kept swimming as hard as she could, trying to get more distance from the boat. 20 feet, 30. By the time the police boat reached it, the bright lights scanning the hull, the voice over the loudspeaker asking anyone on the boat to step out onto the deck, she was 100 feet away, closing in on the shore. They didn't see her. She didn't think they could hear, and she moved gently, slowly, into a thicket of reeds. She tried to keep her teeth from chattering, to avoid getting any of the dirty water in her mouth. The last of the rum was washed from her system, sobered by fear and cold. She didn't see her father in the reeds, on the shore, anywhere. She prayed there were no water snakes at her feet. God damn it, Billy, I'll kill him if I find him. The police boat wasn't going away. They announced they were boarding the boat, and then one of them did. From a distance, she could see him leap from one deck to the other, lithe in a yellow rain jacket. He walked the deck, poked inside. She heard radios and men yelling back and forth, and then finally they backed away, pulling the Siciliana with them. It was an hour, shivering in those reeds, before she was convinced it was safe to come out. She crawled over slippery rocks, cutting her hands on something sharp and onto a dirt and gravel path. There was a fence running along the side of the path. Fuck, she'd have a time finding her way out of here and back to her bike. She sat, shivering, trying to gather the strength to get up and keep going. Where was her father? Could he be in the river? It seemed impossible that her invincible, scrappy father could drown. She wanted to dismiss the idea. He was too damn clever to die in 6 feet of water, wasn't he? But the silence weighed on her, like an enormous cold blanket. She put her head on her knees and cried, feeling waves of frustration and fear rock through. God damn it, Billy, where are you? Be alive. You fucking cock, be alive. She needed to get back to her bike. Maybe he was waiting for her there. Eventually, feeling returned to her legs, and she rose and wandered slowly down the gravel path, water sloshing from her boots. She could make out some warehouses on her right, the river on her left. The smell of chemicals oozed from one or the other. About a half-mile later, she saw the road they'd driven on, the other side of the fence. She pulled herself over the fence, falling once again on her ass, now numb with cold, and walked on, her boots leaving wet prints that shined under the streetlights. She prayed her keys and phone were still in the bag on the back of the bike. She thought about excuses she could use not to go to work the next day. She focused on her wants: to be home, to shower, to sleep, and to find Billy. Each step took concentration, effort. Her body shook, her head ached, and at one point she leaned over and threw up what was left of the chow mein. No sign of cops, no sign of a crazy man named Joe, no sign of her father. Her bike was where she left it, tucked between a dumpster and a truck, keys and phone safe. Her ass was wet on the seat, slippery. She eased it out, ready to hit the gas and get the hell away from there, if she could stop shaking. She put her hand on the right handle and tried to still her thumping heart. Car lights came on, across the street, half blinding her. She knew it was cops. Knew they'd been waiting. Fuck it all, she was going to get worse than probation this time. Billy, why did you drag me into this? She thought about running, but they would catch her for sure. A sedan rolled right at her and stopped a foot away. No siren, no stripes. Her father's head came out the window. Christ almighty, it was his old BMW. Fuck, Dad, you scared the shit out of me. What are you doing? Well, if I can't have the boat, I can at least have my car back. Megan's body kept shaking with a combination of fear, cold, and anger. Really? I heard that guy on the phone. I don't think he's going to give up anything easily. He gave her a big grin, his hair dripping. Oh, it's never done easily, Meg. You all right? I can give you a lift home. We'll come back for the bike in the morning. Her legs shook as she tried to hold the bike up. A drive home and some sleep called to her. But the drive was with a felon in a stolen vehicle. A felon she might murder. And she needed to be at work in a few hours to apply for a job as a recreation specialist. The title of the job started to sound right, to be hers. Maggie! No, Dad. She blew out a deep breath and pulled her wet jacket closer. I'm going to take my bike home. All right, Meg. Thanks for your help. We'll get it next time. She didn't tell him there'd be no next time, or ask him where he was staying that night, or when she'd see him again. She watched the BMW slide away like it was a boat on land, navigating quietly through the night. He'd always loved that car. She took the back roads home, avoiding cops and taking it slow to keep from getting frozen alive. She thought about calling Francis, breaking the silence with a request for commiseration. But he would not have patience for her whining or interest in the caper. There was an expression her father used when they'd get into trouble at school. You dance with the devil, he'd say. You know you're going to get burned. She imagined Francis using it now. She smiled to herself, even thinking of Francis saying it, the way his eyes would get narrow and hold no sympathy for his fool sister. Christ, she needed to call her brother soon. When the job came through, and the dust settled, she would try again. They could have a beer with Billy.